It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, today we're going to talk about private equity, roll-ups, print, IT services. I want to hone in a little bit on Oval Partners and what they're doing over there with New Charter. It's an IT services roll-up they're doing. I saw some numbers on the website, interesting numbers, and I'm going to dissect those a little bit because they don't make any sense to me. But before I do that, what I want to do is a big shout out to my good friend Lee Mayfield. And Lee Mayfield is the CEO and founder of a software company called FlipDeck. Lee sent me a couple of t-shirts, folks. I got a blue one here. I'm wearing the black one under my coat. But FlipDeck's an awesome software. Go to flipdeck.com and check this out. You go to my website, End of the Day with Ray, and check it out. Go to my content collection series. Those content collections are put together with the FlipDeck software. It's a great place for creators to take a whole bunch of their information, a whole bunch of different links, and put it all together in a nice package to send a recipient. Awesome technology. Thanks a lot for the shirts, Lee. So let's jump on the Sharp Interactive board, folks, and let's talk about some private equity roll-ups. Let's talk about IT services, and let's talk about some numbers that make absolutely no sense to me and see if we can get some clarification. So we all know the three main players that are in private equity roll-ups, right? Folks, there's some other ones out there, but these are the three that I want to focus on for a minute. Ubio, owned by Centennial Partners, and you know that deal is 4 years old. They did that in 4 of 2018. We got our friends over at Oval Partners with FlexPrint. Folks, they put that FlexPrint deal, that started 6 years ago. 6 years. Look at this one. They win the contest. Marco with NEP, Norwest Equity Partners, 7-year-old investment. And folks, private equity, I don't think they dream they're going to keep stuff for 7 years when they do these deals, right? I think they think it's going to be 3 or 4 years tops, and then they're going to get out of it. They're going to exit from the investment. Well, the problem is it's print. What happens? Nobody wants print. Who's going to invest in print after a global pandemic, after the whole world realizes we're all going to print less tomorrow than we do today? Everybody knows that now. It's not just Ray saying it, right? And so these private equity groups, they got to make some decisions. I'm going to go on record today and predict that we're going to see private equity. Some of these folks could just leave the industry. I'm not saying some of these folks might, but there's other ones out there. But we might see some of these roll-ups where the investors just say, we're done, we're out. You know, private equity, they don't win every time. They don't, folks. I mean, they want to. That's the goal. But let's be honest, they don't. And they have to decide where they want to go for the future. And they have to unload themselves of investments that aren't going to get them to that future. And when I think about our friends over at Oval Partners as a great example, you know, they've got 2 investments. They got the investments in Flex Technology Group, which is the roll-up of all the copier dealers. And then they have this New Charter. And New Charter Technologies is an IT services roll-up, folks. If you look on Oval Partners' website, you'll see 12 companies there. What's interesting about this, they're adding so many companies to New Charter that Oval Partners can't even keep up with it on their website. Because if you go to New Charter's website, there's 16 partners. 16 partners over there at New Charter. Folks, I was doing a presentation on some numbers that they have on the New Charter website. And when I was doing that, and by the way, I was doing that yesterday, but I only saw 15 partners. Okay, and here's the numbers that were on that website. So the numbers are the same with 16 partners as they were when I did it with 15. But I added some other numbers on this sheet, and I'm going to share with you what those numbers are, because the numbers that New Charter has on their website, and let me share what I mean by the numbers. So they have, for instance, they say they have 125 VCIOs. They say they have 54,130 plus endpoints managed. They say they have 3,200 plus clients, 270 plus engineers, and 950 plus employees. And then I started doing some math based on those numbers, and there's a lot of things that just don't make any sense. And so I based this off of 15 companies, but I guess if they added another company, it's not doing anything because the numbers are the same when there was 15 as there was with 16. So that's probably just a glitch in the numbers. But the numbers that I'm going to share with you today are pretty accurate. So I want to ask some questions, because when you do the math, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. So let's start out here with the number of employees. You know, if you go to a copier business and you ask the owner how many employees do you have, and you take that number times $225,000 to $275,000, you're going to get pretty close to the revenue of that dealership. I'm not sure what that number is in the IT services community because the IT services deliverable is so crazy. It could mean a million different things. Each one of these companies could be defining managed services in a different way. But you would think if you're going to do a roll-up and you're going to put a bunch of IT services companies together, you want to try to deliver consistency across the whole entire platform. I mean, you would think anyway. But, you know, I did some math, and I took the 950 employees, and I said, well, what if they were doing $110,000 a year per employee? What would that equal? Well, folks, when you divide the number of employees by the number of companies, it means you got 63 employees in every single company. And bottom line is, that generates about $7 million in revenue for each one of those companies. Based at $110,000 per employee, which I would think is a pretty low number. If you went up to $200,000 per employee, well, then the math would be $12.7 million as average revenue for those companies. I don't believe that there's 16 or 15 companies out there in a roll-up that are doing $12.7 million as the average. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe these companies are between 4 and 7 million. And if they're between 4 and 7 million, then it's really the $110,000 per employee, which puts them at that 7 million. But folks, here's the problem with that. If you take that 7 million and you divide it by how many customers each company has, which would be 213 customers, by the way, that only comes out to $32,900 a year per customer, or $2,700 per month. In that $2,700 per month, you would have hardware dollars, you would have recurring revenue dollars. So folks, these are low-hanging customers. But then here's what I also saw. They have 54,130 endpoints into 3,200 customers, means the average customer only has 17 endpoints that they're managing. So that means these are, in fact, smaller companies, smaller customers. And, you know, my warning on the smaller customers is simple. Those are going to be taken away from you by really big organizations that are going to come and gobble up that commodity IT services deliverable. So I'm not sure these 17 endpoints and what kind of customers these companies have, but when you arbitrarily throw those numbers up there like that, and then you start digging into them, it's a little bit confusing, folks. I mean, 125 VCIOs. That means they got 8 VCIOs per company. Are they counting account managers as VCIOs because the VCIO and an account manager are two different people? But a lot of folks, they make their account managers VCIOs. But VCIO is a really skill set. It's a whole different skill set than an account manager. So I think there's a little confusion there. But ladies and gentlemen, you know, here's my concern. I look at private equity, and there's been so many investments, you know, so many investments in the technology space all through the last 2 years of this global pandemic. I call it the pandemic bubble that's coming soon, because some of this stuff's just going to fall apart. But when I look at these roll-ups, I want to make sure that these private equity groups aren't buying into something that's never going to be able to be delivered, kind of like they bought into the print side. Because, folks, there's no way that private equity invested in these printing companies if they didn't believe they were going to put other products and services into those organizations. There's no way they would have made these investments. They were trying to build value in these organizations, you know, help them out, synergize some stuff, throw some ad backs on the table, and then maybe go to the stock market, or maybe just spin it off and sell it as an end game. Like look at Dex. They ended up selling like to Staples as an example. But in all reality, none of them diversified to the point. Marco is the only one really with a really big, robust IT services platform. And when Norwest Partners bought them, they already had that in play. Which means you got to ask yourself the question, why is this thing 7 years old? What's the end game for Marco? But when I look at the IT roll-ups and I look at some numbers like this, I'm almost thinking to myself, are private equity buying into something that's never going to be able to be done? I mean, what's the goal for the New Horizons roll-up? What's the end game goal for that? Is it all going to be named New Charter? Are we going to have a bunch of different names all over the marketplace? I mean, what's the end game for that? What does that look like? And then how do these numbers really make sense? And I welcome New Charter. If they ever want to come on the end of the day with Ray, I'd love to talk to them about this, because these numbers are a little bit, well, to say the least, they seem a little bit bizarre. So folks, a lot of changes are going to come. But I'm going on the record and saying that we're going to start seeing private equity exiting out of the print space. Some of those exits, well, they might be a halfway home run. Some of those exits could be a total flop. Private equity doesn't win them all the time. Some are winners and some are losers. There is a thing called financial engineering that some of these private equity folks can do. They can do leveraged loans. They can pull the money out that way. But there's no way in the world that these private equities that are in the space today are going to be here 10 years from now. And if they are, that's really bizarre. And some of them, that's only 3 years away. Some things to think about, my friends, because we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all.